Thanks for tuning in. You're listening to the Embrace Mental Health podcast,
where we embrace a not-so-clinical approach
to conversations surrounding all things mental health. Happy Mental Health Monday, everybody. Today we have Wesley with us.
Hi.
And me, Kelsey. Welcome to the third episode. We're officially on to number 3. I don't know, for some reason that feels like a big deal.
Got momentum now.
Yeah, exactly. It's more than a couple. We're to a few stage. And if you do something 3 times, it's more likely, you know. But yes, today's topic is stress. But of course, first we have our beginning question. So Wes has a question for us.
I do, and Kelsey has never heard this question before. Well, you have, but not today. So I've had a fun song stuck in my head since yesterday evening, and so my question is, what is the most recent song that you remember getting stuck in your head, or what's stuck in your head right now? If there's something right now.
Oh man, that's hilarious because like as soon as you say that, my mind just goes blank.
That's how it goes.
Yeah, and I have songs stuck in my head all the time, but I can't remember one from today. Huh. All right, you go first. Let me see if I can think of one.
Okay, sounds good. So the song that I've had stuck in my head, and I don't know, you think that we'll get like a DMCA copyright takedown if I sing it a little bit? It's that song. I first heard it in the movie WALL-E. It's but on your Sunday clothes, there's lots of world out there. I found out that it's from Hello Dolly. And if you listen to the full song, it is an excellent musical style song. And I've heard some other songs from Hello Dolly that were equally good. So I'm not like huge into musicals, but I do enjoy them. So I've got to check out that show at some point.
Interesting.
I think there's a movie of it. So.
Oh man, I haven't really listened to a ton of music today. So like I don't know. I cannot think of one that's coming to my mind.
Oh no.
Oh my gosh.
Is there a song that you have listened to recently that you're really into?
Oh man. I know like over the weekend, let me think. I was just talking with my friends. Okay, here. Well, I at least have a story about getting songs stuck in your head. I don't know if I can't verify this is the most recent song that's ever been stuck in my head, but
no one will know. No one will know.
Yeah. All right, so over the weekend, I was with some friends, and I don't even remember how the topic came up, but somehow we were referencing Bye Bye Birdie, and all of a sudden, every single song that's in Bye Bye Birdie was stuck in my head the rest of the weekend. But I was in Bye Bye Birdie, a completely professional production.
Oh, I bet.
Yep, high school musical, and not the polished kind that they put on Disney, like the train wreck more so kind of version. But yep, so let's see. The first one that comes to my head is Have you heard about Hugo and Kim? Whatever, that whole ditty, but yeah.
Yeah.
Kept singing that.
I've seen that musical once. I'm not super familiar. So yeah, musicals, those songs are well crafted to get stuck in our heads, and they're connected to characters and stories. So that helps too. So
Yep.
good deal.
All right. So
like I mentioned before, question leading into a little bit heavier topic. I assume since we're talking about mental health, probably the majority of our topics are heavier though. So we can't use that as an excuse. Yeah.
That's true. Well, maybe someday we'll find a light, fluffy topic for mental health, but not today. So yeah, we're talking about stress. And so, I don't know, when you kind of think about the connection between stress and mental health, I think sometimes people just think of those as separate things, and there is a way in which they are separate. They like being stressed doesn't automatically mean being anxious, but I think there can also be a lot of correlation between stress and mental health. I guess when you think about stress, there is a certain physical reaction that happens when you have stress. You have a reaction, and obviously our bodies have been created to have these reactions in order to keep us safe. And so when you are in a stressful situation, your body sends signals, and your brain and the hypothalamus is what I learned today, or probably relearned, but sends signals out to your adrenal glands that then can release a lot of stress hormones, especially adrenaline and cortisol. Those are two of the big ones. It's not the only ones. There are so many hormones, but
Yeah.
and in a lot of ways, those hormones help prepare your body to better defend yourself. It turns up things that help you perform better, and it also turns down things that might inhibit your ability to kind of deal with those things. But I think a lot of us are used to that saying of fight or flight.
Yeah, if I could jump in with a little
Yeah,
term
please.
here that I think can help frame this, is I've heard this coined as a threat response. That's what it is, you think about our ancient ancestors who needed this function, this bodily and mental function to respond to threats. And that's what most of human history is that kind of a period of needing to do that. And so that's a wonderful gift of evolution that we continue to live with, except that in the modern world, there are very few actual bodily threats to us and our loved ones in our day-to-day life. And yet we feel stress all the time because we continue to perceive threats. We continue to have that threat response triggered. And so our body gets ready, thanks to our brain and those wonderful processes that you just talked about, gets ready to respond to the threat, either by fighting it off or running away. And those are the ways that we survive. That's how we survived this long. That's how we got here. And so, we need to be, I think all these things that are, all these areas in our lives where our mental health feels out of whack, typically there's actually the thing that's out of whack is actually a helpful thing that we wouldn't necessarily want to go away either. So
Yeah.
threat
A
response.
lot of times our greatest strengths can also become some of our weaknesses and vice versa. But
Totally.
yeah. And I think part of the issue too is, like you said, because we're not actually in danger of being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or, whatever it is.
As far as we know.
As far as we know, yeah. Not yet, anyway. The way the last few years have gone, it just kind of seems like it could be around the corner. But I think we also all know that we all have stressors in our life, whether it's work deadlines or feeding our families on time or keeping schedules or just all kinds of different things that are not life-threatening, but still in our modern world, it gets that fight or flight system on. And while it is a helpful function and, like you said, a protective function for us, when it gets stuck in the on position, it actually has a lot of health detriments. And not even just, I guess, it has physical health detriments, but it also has, emotional detriments or, mental health detriments. And it can present in a lot of ways. It's definitely a connection with anxiety and depression and some of those things that we've talked about, but it can also lead to things like high blood pressure and increased heart rate and all sorts of things that when it gets stuck on, it's not supposed to be stuck on all the time.
No, yeah, that can't be that. I shouldn't say it can't be, because for many people it is. But if that is the default, then that's an unhealthy place to be, and that's going to really wreak havoc in our lives. And there are probably some listeners who are like, yeah, it is wreaking havoc in my life.
Yes. I think stress is something that everybody can relate to. You don't have to feel like you don't have to feel comfortable within a mental illness label necessarily to say that I experience a lot of stress. Like I think most people would say they experience a lot of stress.
Yeah. In fact, I think that in the United States in 2023, I would say probably a good chunk of people would say that stress and distress, which we'll talk about in a moment here, that it's a normal part of everyday life. I
Yeah.
remember a year or two ago, I like the Vlog Brothers on YouTube, Hank and John Green, and I remember John Green, I think it was, talked about going to the doctor, and his doctor asked, it was a new doctor or something, and asked him how many times a day he sneezes, and he's like, yeah, I think the normal amount, and the doctor told him that sneezing isn't normal, and his mind is, he's like, sneezing isn't normal? Are you kidding me? But I think that that's how a lot of people would respond if I were to say that actually we could live basically stress free if we knew how to manage our responses to triggers and our bodies to interrupt that threat response. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. I think one more piece to discuss before we kind of move on, but some of that physical piece of stress too. Sometimes your stress reaction is, I mean, it's just natural. Like we just talked about, everybody has this built in as a protection system. But some people genetically might be built a little different. So their reaction to stress might be biologically, like, I don't know, you've got some really overeager adrenal glands or, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a piece of which your reaction to stress can be affected by stress or even trauma that you faced in your life before. Like, a common book or a phrase that a lot of people will reference is, the body keeps the score. And there's definitely a truth to that, where your body felt threatened, so it responded in a way to that threat. And then the next time it comes across something that thinks like it could be that same life-threatening issue or whatever it is, you have that much more of a reaction because your body has experienced that before and has this response almost kind of naturally ingrained. I don't want to say ingrained because you can relearn how you respond, but it takes work. And so you just kind of
you can outgrain it.
Yeah.
But no, that's such a great description that matches my understanding of it as well, having also learned about trauma pretty extensively. That the things that we learn, I think that most of us have experiences on some level. The things that we learn in childhood, especially earlier childhood, and our adolescence to some degree, really stick with us, and it's hard to outgrain that. It's hard to get that out. That frames the way that we see reality. And so if we have experienced something overwhelmingly stressful where we felt that we were powerless to respond to that threat, we couldn't fight, we couldn't get away, and we froze, and it just sort of happened. And it's not even, the kinds of typical traumas that we think about, like a car wreck or a sexual assault or, war or something horrible like that, which of course, many people experience those things too. But sometimes it's just being yelled at by somebody or something going very differently than we had expected in a way that stressed us out. It can be things that, from the outside, you might look at it and be like, oh, that wasn't that big of a deal. But just the way that our brain interprets that and that our bodies respond to that decide whether or not it's a trauma. So if we have a lot of those experiences, or if we have some really, really overwhelming experiences, that tells us pretty much for the rest of our lives, unless we do a lot of hard work on it, that the world is a dangerous place. And so we're more likely to respond to threats quickly. And you think about it, if you live in a dangerous reality, you want to be able to respond to threats very quickly. But a lot of times that doesn't really match up.
And it's just it's a natural response too. It's not that you sit there and you decide, when that thing comes up, you say, I'm going to contemplate my childhood right now and think about that. And then I'm going to have this response. Like it's just triggered, instant. Like it's instant. Yeah. And so you have to relearn and, a lot of different ways to go about that. But yeah.
Let me say one more thing on this topic, because I think it's huge. There's a test called, I just had it up. Oh, here it is. Adverse Childhood Effects. It's ACE. It's called the ACE quiz, and everybody can go out and you can find it for free online if you want to search it, and you can find your ACE score. And I think it's on a scale of 1 to 9, if my memory serves me. It's something like that. And we found that we can predict with incredible accuracy how high your risk is for all different kinds of things in your life as you go through life, as you age, or even right now, how long you're going to live, and how likely you are to get different diseases and or to have relationship problems. I mean, there's a whole host of probably dozens of different things that can be predicted solely based on your ACE score. And the higher your ACE score, that basically just means that you've had a higher amount of childhood trauma. So it's
Yeah.
really interesting, and I don't know. It's crazy that we can predict these things with such accuracy, and most people aren't even aware of it. I think that's what blows my mind about it.
Yeah, yeah. It's not a conscious reaction. It's,
Mhm.
a lot of subconscious in there too. Yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll link that link to that test in our show notes. So
Great.
look for that. Take your ACE test. I think I will. I'm curious.
Mhm. So I want to talk for a second, and I mentioned this in, I think, the intro episode, or one of our first episodes, about how stress, much like not all, like this whole system of threat response is ultimately a good thing. It's something that we're designed to have with us, and if we don't, then that would probably cause more problems, and would have a hard time, make it harder for us to stay safe in the world, and much more so would have a hard time for us to stay safe in the ancient world that our bodies and minds are mostly evolved out of. But anyway, just in that same way, stress isn't always a bad thing either. Stress can be a good thing. Stress, and basically all it is we're perceiving that there's something that we need to attend to, something that we need to respond to. And there are, frankly, a lot of things that we need to respond to. For the episode, Kelsey and I were talking about our days and our weeks and how we have a lot of things to respond to. We're a little too busy for our own liking. And if we experience zero stress, we would not be able to accomplish what we need to accomplish in order to maintain these things that are important to us. And the same goes for everyone listening to this podcast. And so the type of stress that really fuels you. You think about adrenaline and how adrenaline can be really helpful in some situations, or adrenaline, maybe it helped you study for that quiz, or, finish that project on time. So, thank goodness for stress in those situations. The kind of stress that basically gives us results that we want, that fuels us to accomplish tasks that we're trying to focus on, is called eustress, EUSTRESS. And that is in contrast to distress. Distress is what makes it harder to accomplish those tasks. And so instead of giving us more focus and more energy and clearer thinking like eustress can do, although clearer thinking, I would say maybe decreasing your stress, you're better off with that. But distress inhibits our ability to focus and to get things done, and it might be behind. How when you have so many things to do, you don't want to do anything at all, and you procrastinate. That's because you're in distress. So I would say that it can really only be defined or distinguished between eustress and distress based on what are the results, and is it getting you the results that you want? That's how you tell if it's eustress or distress. But I just think it's helpful to note that the goal is not to rid our lives of stress 100% in every situation, but
Right.
it's to be able to kind of get in the driver's seat, get stress in the back seat, so that or just like fear and anxiety and these kinds of things that can run our lives into the ground. It's like, okay, you're along for the ride. You serve a useful purpose, and you can give me your input, but I'm in the driver's seat here. And to allow the eustress and really utilize that and manage the distress and minimize that.
Yeah. I think sometimes we wish that the solution to stress was, I'll just take out my adrenal glands, or I'll just get rid of that
That's right.
hypothalamus, and then
Give
we'll
me
be
a surgery.
fine.
Give me a pill. Yeah.
Yeah. But in reality, that would not be actually helpful in your life.
Mhm.
But I think sometimes too, a lot of people get into that space where they say, well, stress is just inevitable. It's a part of life, and my life is really stressful, but that's just what it is, kind of a thing.
Yeah, in our society, I think that I've met people, and I may have been this way in some seasons of life, where it's like we're almost proud of how stressed we are and how busy we
Yep.
are. It's like, oh man, I just crashed, and I'm really burning out, and I'm just way too busy, and I'm overwhelmed, and so life is good, right? Things are going places. I'm super productive. I think that's mostly an American problem, but I think
Yeah,
that
yeah.
in cultures all over the world it is. So yeah.
Yeah. So the next thing we want to talk about is kind of finding that middle line a little bit of not just totally ridding yourself of stress, because I mean, there's a reality in which that's not entirely possible to remove all stressful situations from your life, but also, find some ways that we can understand that living a super stressful life that is just not working well for you, that's not inevitable. Like there are things that you can do to, the first thing we want to talk about is to reduce our stress.
Mhm.
And then the second thing is how to better manage our stress. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll go ahead and speak on our first point about reducing stress. So we're talking about limiting the amount of stress that comes in the first place. And so one of the things is really, and I'm going to sound like your dad here, hopefully, by saying that things like forming good, thoughtful, wise, prudent, productive habits like planning ahead. And the thing that made me want to include this in the podcast was about how Kelsey set up this podcast to so we were recording a month ahead. And so whenever you're listening to this, assuming you're all caught up and you're listening to it fresh out of the gate, then we recorded this about a month ago, everyone. So happy September from the past.
Yes.
And but and Kelsey did that very intentionally, I think, and we haven't talked about this specifically, but I know that Kelsey, like so many of us, lives with a tenuous relationship with stress and anxiety, and so she planned ahead, and that's going to decrease the amount of stress that this podcast causes in her life, and in my life too. So thanks for that. Yeah, I'm really appreciative of the anxious people in my life. And so let's see, and then going right along with that, it's the idea of delayed gratification. So I'm going to do the work now, so that I don't have to do it later. I remember being a kid and watching Barney. And I remember this little rhyme.
That's how old you are.
That's how old I am. Totally dating
Me
myself.
too.
Do your work the right way before you take the time to play. Does that ring a bell for you, Kelsey?
Yeah.
And that's, hey, but it's stuck with me, and so that was effective. It's a good lesson for all of us, and that's another thing where that's a high success predictor, is if you can implement delayed gratification in your life. I like to back into parking spaces as just kind of a discipline of, okay, I'm going to do the hard work right now so that I can make it easier on myself in the future. And then one more point on this is the idea that it's helpful to check in and ask ourselves, how much can I actually prepare for this thing in the future? And how much am I just kind of, do I have the gas pedal down with when I'm in park? In other words, how much am I just kind of burning off energy, worrying about something that I have no control over? There's some things in life, like this podcast, that Kelsey can take reasonable steps and we can take reasonable steps to prepare for. But then after that point, we could also be awake all night wondering how it's going to go and how everybody's going to respond to it, and if it's going to be as successful as we hope it is. That is unproductive worry. So it can help to ask yourself, okay, how can I realistically affect change here? And if the answer is I can't, well, then it's best to turn your attention elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. I think another thing too, that has been kind of helpful for me, it's been a practice that I've done from time to time in my life, is just kind of taking inventory of my life of, okay, how much time am I spending doing this? How much time am I spending doing this? And I think a piece of that too is, a few years ago, I decided like I needed to kind of figure out what my priorities were. And I think, we use that word priorities a lot, but when I actually sat down and was like, okay, what are my priorities? Like it was like this kind of vague, open-ended question, but I started to write down the things that were important in my life and then did try to rank them. And I mean, I've kind of kept it in flux. So like there are times where I've looked and reflected on it and said, actually, after thinking about it, like I'm going to make this switch, or, my life changed. And so, making some shifts in what the order might have been for priority. But I think also having an idea of what your actual priorities are, then when you come into conflict with certain choices, I think a lot of stress stress reduction comes down to your choices. I don't think all of it, but there are certain things where, if you say yes to everything, then at some point, you're not doing any of them well versus if you might say no to a couple of things, you might be able to be more present in certain places or like I decided one of my top priorities had to be my health and specifically my mental health. And so, even though I wanted to say yes to some things or I thought, this choice could be fun or whatever, if I sat down and I said, well, I can make this choice, but I can see how this is going to negatively affect my health and, make me take some steps back and all the work. In that case, it's not worth it. And so, saying no to things sometimes too. And I think a lot of it comes down to balance, which is such a tricky thing. I mean, there's a reason that, every camp has a group activity of trying to stand on one of those teeter-totters and make it balance. Like balance is not an easy thing to pull off. And that's, a good metaphor for finding balance in your life too. It's really easy to tip one way or the other. But, finding ways and discovering, which choices help you to find more balance in your life.
Yep. And then, and then I wanted to share one more free resource, and I don't want to fill up our episode description too much, but there's this great resource called the Values Card Sort. And so that's another one. You can just do a Google search or whatever, and it's available for free as a PDF. It's not really in cards. It's really more like little cutout pieces of paper. But I have clients do it sometimes because it's got like 50 or 60 different just kind of general values, and you can sort out what are the most important, what are important but not the most important, what are the ones that are not important to me, and so on. And it can really help to build your life around those values and make your choices that way. So. Yeah. So as opposed to reducing stress, this is about when you have stress in your life, how do you get into the driver's seat? I'm making a lot of car metaphors today for some reason. But how do you take charge of your stress and really take control over how much you are keeping in your moment to moment life, and how do you reduce it when it's already there? That's what we're talking about now, managing stress. So
I think another piece of managing stress too is kind of learning how to turn that switch off. There are some times where you cannot take yourself out of all your stress, or you've said no to everything you can and you still have a lot on your plate. And so even in those moments where like there are a lot of stressful things in your life, I think it's also, there are physical activities that you can do that help to reduce those cortisol and adrenaline levels or kind of turn that system off from time to time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So going back to that earlier conversation about our physical and mental responses to perceived threats. We can't control all of our hormones and every little thing that our brain is doing, but there are some areas where we can kind of interrupt that process. It's really a conversation between our brain and the rest of our body that occurs through our central nervous system. And so our brain, that's like a feedback loop. Our brain is telling our body, okay, you've got to get ready to respond to this threat. And then our body is like, okay, I'm ready. Let's keep this going. Let's pump up the adrenaline here. But so even though we can't always control how our brain is automatically responding, we can control our bodies. Everyone has control over systems in your bodies like breathing and your muscle groups that can actually send the message back to your brain to say, nope, actually nothing to see here. Your threat response was triggered, but we're going to sort of nip this in the bud and say, we don't need to expel all that extra energy. One of the most popular ways of doing this is deep breathing, and especially breathing into your abdomen, into your belly. Most people, I just did it now when I took an inhale, most people breathe into their chest, and that's what we do when we're stressed out. But our bodies are designed to breathe into our bellies, and that is what gets us into a place of, there's a whole theory called the polyvagal theory, if you want to look that up. But basically there's the parasympathetic mode, and that's what should be kind of our default functioning of, I'm good, there's no threat, I'm going through life, I can make good decisions, I can focus, I can pay attention to what's going on. So to get into that mode, So we want to breathe into our abdomen. And actually right now listening to this, unless you're driving and you need two hands on the wheel, but go ahead and put one or two hands on your belly, on your abdomen, and take a breath. And you can figure out, is my belly expanding as I inhale and deflating as I exhale? And if not, try to move your breathing into your belly. That's something that you can check in with yourself whenever you think about it, and really train yourself to do that on a regular basis. If you look at babies, that's how babies breathe. If you want further evidence that's how we're really designed to breathe. And then I want to talk about this next part here too, about how I've learned anyway, I'm quite convinced that while deep breathing and especially abdominal breathing can be helpful, maybe the most powerful tool that we have to interrupt the threat response and to bring down our stress level is it's called self-regulation. I call it muscle regulation because specifically we are regulating our muscle groups. So this is something that I know that I think it's Navy SEALs or just, one of the top military groups is trained to do this in high intensity situations because they don't want to start having a panic attack in those extremely, the most possible stressful situations. They need to be able to manage their stress. And so they're taught to do this specific thing. So it's pretty simple. You're relaxing the muscles in your body. If you think right now, and here I'm going to do this with you in real time, I've got tension in my abdomen. I've got tension in my shoulders a little bit. You can kind of pay attention to the muscle groups in your body and release that tension. And hey, you might need to do it again in 30 seconds, but you can do that. And in fact, I've tried to make it a practice to check in with myself every few minutes or so, or if I'm sitting in a room with a client and hey, where am I tense and how can I, let me release that tension so that I can kind of give off that energy to my client. And that's kind of a shorthand way of saying that they can pick up. There's all sorts of automatic systems in their brain that pick up on how stressed I am. When you're in a room with a bunch of stressed people, you can feel it, right? Your body responds to that. So that's good for me and for the people around me to be able to do that. So just real quick, the two of the best exercises for that, one is I like to just call it the limp fish, which is a very silly name, but it's memorable. And really just take a deep breath in into your abdomen. And then when you breathe out, just relax all of your muscles at the same time into your chair. And you can bring your stress level, on a scale of 1 to 10, you can bring it from a 7 down to a 4 right there. And then the other one is, as I mentioned, a body scan. So you can do this in about 10 or 20 seconds. Close your eyes if you're able to, and pay attention to, so you can start at the top of your head, into your face, your jaw. I find that my tongue goes up against the roof of my mouth, so I relax my tongue, my neck, shoulders, out to your eye. And I'm moving through this more quickly than is ideal, but your arms, your fingers, your chest, abdomen, your back, right down your body, into your buttocks, your pelvic area. In fact, this might seem a little awkward or uncomfortable for people, but really your pelvic area is a really common place to hold stress, especially if you've experienced any kind of sexual trauma in your life. And so it could be, again, it sounds a little awkward, but good to pay attention to, am I holding that? If you've ever heard of Kegel exercises before, it's that muscle right there. And so if you can, as you do your body scan, don't miss that one. Go into your thighs, your calves, and your feet, your toes, and so on. And if you have time, go back up from the bottom to the top. But literally 10 to 20 seconds, anywhere you are. I do this when I'm driving because I get stressed out by idiot drivers on the road. That's one of the few places in my life where I have a stress problem, but I check in with my body. So strongly encourage that. That can really change your life. And I'm being totally honest and genuine. I live with very little stress in my life thanks to tools like these.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the ways that I've kind of heard, describing what you're talking about, is a lot of times when your stress hormones are up, or whatever, however you want to name it, whether it's your fight or flight or whatever. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, you want to think your way out of it, but it's really hard for your brain to think rationally when it's kind of firing on all cylinders. And so a lot of times, if you can relax your body first, your mind will follow suit, but it's really hard. I mean, and there's definitely connection between mind and body. So there's certainly been times where I realize I'm stressed and I'm oh, I am clenching my jaw, and I'm just going to take a moment to just think of relaxing that. And then, your body feeling less tense, all of a sudden the rest of you feels less tense. It's kind of like your body follows suit after, I mean, your mind follows suit after your body relaxes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, any good meditation or mindfulness exercise, which we'll mention again in a second here, focuses on the body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you're just jumping right to visualizing or right to thinking about a certain kind of thing, you're missing it, and it's probably not going to be very effective. Yeah.
Yeah, your mind is still firing on all cylinders. You got to get the body relaxed first. So a couple of other exercises you can do. So one thing that was very helpful for me was I did what was called progressive muscle relaxation, which is very similar to what Wesley just described. Mm-hmm. But rather than it being just a 20-second or 1 minute exercise, it's like 26 minutes. Like, I mean, you can find, mine was 26 minutes. That's not specific, but they can be, a good half hour. It doesn't have to be that long. But when I was really working towards reclaiming my mental health, I every single day was doing the progressive muscle relaxation exercise that took about 26, 27 minutes, where you start with just clenching your fists and you hold and then relax and then just kind of let it release. And then you move up and you do your biceps next and you clench them and you hold it for a while. And you go all the way, from top of your head down to your clenching your toes, kind of a thing. But that was, it feels crazy because nobody thinks that they have 26 minutes of time to do something like that every single day. But I truly do believe that that was one of the things that ended up being the biggest difference for me, because at the end of those 26 minutes, I was always in like just a wonderful state of relaxation. And there wasn't a single time that I went through it and didn't feel like it was worth it. And so while that's a tool that you can't do while you're driving, or it's not just like a quick, simple, or, kind of a thing, I still think, maybe not every day, but maybe, shoot for once a week or something like that. If you can implement that into your life too, that can be a really great way to fully relax and kind of stay in that relaxed state for a longer time, especially if you're struggling with anxiety within your stress as well.
Have you ever used that as a sleeping tool, Kelsey?
Yeah, a lot of times I would do it before I would go to bed, and that would help me fall asleep quicker. And I've done a definite like body scan exercise before going to sleep too, and it is very helpful to help get you relaxed.
Clenching your muscles and then letting it go, along with the deep breathing, that's like the ultimate sleeping tool. I think the progressive muscle relaxation has the most research behind it as an exercise to help you sleep. Certainly during the day too. It helps you really like distinguish between, oh, now I'm relaxed. I thought I was relaxed before, but now that I clenched up and then let go, I just also want to point out how crazy and awesome it is that it's like, what's something that changed your life? Well, actually, like squeezing my muscles and letting it go is one of the things that changed my life. It's as simple as that. I love it. So I mentioned this already, but want to just spend another minute or two talking about mindfulness and meditation. And these have unfortunately almost become buzzwords or cliches, at least in the mental health world. Maybe I'm in a bubble here, but I think that probably more and more people are hearing these words. And this is one area where it sometimes gets into pop psychology, and it's like, just be mindful of your surroundings. What in the world does that even mean, right? And this is steeped in thousands of years of religious practice, especially from Buddhism, but really it's found in all major religions and in some branch or another. But really, if I could summarize mindfulness, it's simply being aware. It's noticing. It's noticing the present moment. And so, I catching myself right now, almost doing a grounding exercise of paying attention to what's in the room around me. You can count how many blue things are there in the room, how many tiles are on the ceiling. Those are grounding exercises, or the body scan. That is a mindfulness exercise. You're paying attention to the present moment. And meditation, the way that I would describe it anyway, is basically exercises. There's all different kinds of meditation, so I'm not going to pretend to be able to give a comprehensive summary here. But specifically, mindfulness meditations are exercises that you can do physically and mentally for that purpose of being aware of the present moment. And if you can practice these and look into them, maybe in the future we'll do an episode on them, but there's so many resources out there, excellent ones, even just on YouTube, for mindfulness meditations. If you can do this for 20 minutes a day, even 10, even 5 minutes a day, it can revolutionize your life. And I would say that maybe if I had to identify the single biggest area that it helps, it would be when you are aware and in the present moment through these kinds of meditations, you're able to contrast that with the rest of your life. And so as you're going about your day, you're more aware of, hang on a second, I'm just really wrapped up in my thoughts here. I'm just like in a spiral of anxiety. And if you don't have that mindfulness awareness, if you don't have that presence to contrast it with, you don't even notice that you're there. That's why it's all about noticing. So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, looking into mindfulness and meditation can revolutionize your life in terms of minimizing stress.
Mm-hmm. Then a couple more stress management techniques to kind of go through quickly here before we're going to do
really
a practice
episode.
one. Yeah, yes. Another thing that can be very helpful for dealing with stress is journaling. And one of the things that is super interesting that I learned about journaling or writing in a diary or, whatever you want to call it, the act of physically writing. So not typing and not, typing on your phone, but physically writing with, pen and pencil or paper and pen. Yeah. Is that it's one of the rare activities where both sides of your brain are being used. And so physically writing something uses both your left brain and your right brain, and those kind of activities can help those sides of the brain work together. And so, while I think like relaxation techniques, the stuff that we've talked to up until this point can help you get to a point where you can journal. Because sometimes, like we said before, when you're in a really stressful state of mind, it can be hard to journal mindfully or get your thoughts kind of gathered. But if you can get that to a point, I think we all know writing about something can generally help you work through it. But part of the reason that it works is because it uses both sides of the brain. So it helps you use that emotional part of your brain, and it all helps use the rational part of your brain. So it can help bring those things together. And a lot of times when they're together, that's when it's beautiful, right? A lot of times we either want to be on one side all emotion, or we want to be all rationality. But the reality is living in those extremes, neither of them is particularly helpful or conducive to a healthy living style. And so to find one of those things that can help bridge that gap is always helpful I found it to be very helpful for me, at least for some stress reduction from time to time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Engaging both sides of the brain is our body's natural way of processing stress. I practice EMDR as a counselor, and that's what it's all about, is engaging both sides of your brain in specific ways. So yeah, it's our natural process for doing that. And let me just say this about journaling, because I am not a big writer, I like writing, but more of the typing kind. But I'm not big into journaling myself. And one of the biggest hurdles for me, and I've heard this from others too, that's why I'm sharing this in the podcast, is that I hate looking back over my journals. It's just like the highest level of cringe for me. I don't know why, if that's just something I need to work through, but I'm just like kind of so embarrassed by my past self and the things that I said and the way that I said it, and just, whatever. Because, and I think what it comes down to is like, when I'm looking back through my journals, I am not in that raw, real, open, vulnerable place that I was in when I was writing that. And so it's like, I'm seeing like all the layers peeled back. And it's like, that's not me, really that it's all me, and me looking at that is me too. So, one thing that I found helpful is to just, tear up and throw away my papers after I write on them, or some people burn them, or whatever you want to do. But, like
one
Kelsey
thing I'll
was saying,
say,
go ahead.
I love whiteboards. That's for that reason.
Oh, yeah.
You can get one at a dollar store, and you can just get like one of those ultra fine tip pens, and you can write it all down, and then you can just erase it. You don't have to see it again. But yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, just to solidify that it's not about writing nicely or writing in a way that you or anybody else ever needs to read. It is the actual act of putting it on the page and getting that stress and all those thoughts out. So one more area that we want to explore with managing stress is, and you're going to like this one, do things that you enjoy, do things that make you happy. We're all up for that, and we can all, most of us can use a little bit more of that in our life. And so one of the biggest ones, and this has a lot of research behind it too. In fact, as I was getting ready for this podcast, I did a little bit of research and and just to confirm that it's like, did I just make up that there's research behind this? But no, indeed, just a few years ago, there's a big study done by Harvard, among many other research studies in this body of research about exposure to nature, touching grass and hugging trees and getting in green spaces. These kinds of ideas can be really helpful. If you can go out and do that for 20 minutes, it's shown to greatly decrease stress. So, hey, get outside as much as possible and embrace the weather, whether you're here in Michigan or anywhere else. Wear the right clothes and get outside. What else, Kelsey?
Absolutely. I think all of us know that laughter is the best medicine, of course, right? And so laughter, I mean, anything that you can do to make yourself laugh is always one of those mood boosting kind of things and can help, I think, in some ways has helped me to have mindfulness in some ways where if I can laugh, I kind of can start to realize I am taking things too seriously and it's not that deep, kind of a thing. But whether that's watching funny videos on YouTube or finding a show that makes you laugh, like whenever one of my comfort shows, so to speak, is Big Bang Theory of all things, but it's because it makes me laugh. And so, things that make you laugh can help you reduce stress.
Yeah, one interesting thing on this point is that I've realized, and everybody's probably seen this before, sometimes when we're really nervous or kind of stressed or uncomfortable about something, a lot of people have kind of a nervous laughter, right? I've had clients who are talking about horrific experiences and I see them smiling and laughing. And sometimes I'll reflect back to them, what's that about? And really it's because it's an automatic defense mechanism for stress and basically being uncomfortable and feeling like you're in danger. I'm talking about something I don't like right now, that's what it is. But we can do it in an intentional, healthy way too. I just,
yes,
that's a pretty good example.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then the last thing to kind of touch on here is exercise. And part of doing physical exercise is that it helps kind of, I think, flush out the adrenaline and the cortisol, and then you get endorphins instead. And that's really fun. And honestly, in all of this, when you think about it, like, okay, so what's the best exercise? And that's not just in terms of physical exercise, but even of the list that we just gave. Like, what is the best stress-reducing exercise? And the thing that I've always heard that I think is incredibly true in this is the best exercise is the exercise that you will do.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And so, for some people, running 5 miles is the best exercise for them. For some people, that is just torturous. And so, maybe going for a walk or doing yoga instead, or, whatever exercise it is that you will actually do. And that, includes some of this, breathing and progressive muscle, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The best way to manage your stress is to pick an exercise that you will actually are more likely to do. But yeah.
I bet that out of all these things that we've talked about, including physical exercise and athletics and all these kinds of things, I would bet that probably every single person listening to this, and I would say this if there's dozens of you or hundreds of you or thousands of you, you're going to connect with one of these. So experiment. If nothing jumps out to you right away, experiment, and one of them at least, if not more, is going to be like, you know what, that felt good, and that's something I can actually do.
Yeah, and it's a good thing to try new things too, because when I first was reading about the progressive muscle relaxation thing, I was like, this sounds kind of weird, but whatever, I'll give it a try. And then I finished it, and I was like, that was wonderful. Like, I wasn't necessarily expecting that. Yeah. And so, yeah, you might be surprised what you enjoy, but if you hate it, maybe don't repeat that one. Find a different way, because the reality is we can't practice all of these, and so find one that works well for you.
Yeah. So to close out this podcast, I know that we already talked about some exercises. I know we're getting pretty long on time here for one of these podcasts, but again, it's practical. I hope it's a really valuable podcast and worth your time. But I want to close this out with something else that I think is worthwhile. And I'm actually going to lead you through a very short 3-ish minute breathing exercise. And so, of course, again, if you're driving, be aware of that, but you can modify it. And so when I invite you to close your eyes, of course, do that in a way that's safe. But I will indeed invite you to get comfortable wherever you're at and close your eyes or soften your eyelids if you don't want to close your eyes. And have your feet on the floor if you can, have your back straight if you can. If you can't, it's not the end of the world. You can still participate. And this is going to be a little bit of mindfulness. So just notice your breathing and whatever else is floating around in your mind. Really bring your focus to your breathing. Let that other stuff fade away. It'll be there when you're done. Notice each inhale and each exhale. Invite you, if you can, to breathe in through your nose. And then you can breathe out through your nose as well, or out through your mouth. But inhaling through your nose. Don't need to change anything at this point. And follow the path of the air through your nose, down your throat, and into your torso. As you inhale and as you exhale, follow it back out. Up and out. And I'll invite you to do what we talked about and breathe into your abdomen if you're not already. And as I said, you can put your hand on your belly if you want to see if you're doing that. Just noticing your breath. And your mind may have already started to wander. That's fine. That's what our minds do. Just come back to the breath, no problem. Notice any cool sensations or warm sensations. Notice your body inflating with each inhale and deflating with each exhale. And now I will invite you to slow down your breathing. Whatever that looks like for you, wherever you were before, keep it nice and slow, especially those exhales. That's one more effective way to send the message to your brain that there's no threat, is to make your exhales nice and long. And again, if your mind has wandered, just come back to the breath. That's fine. Keep noticing. All right. I wasn't tracking the time, but I'm going to go ahead and invite you as you're ready. Open your eyes or look around and quickly reorient yourself to where you're at. Wiggle your fingers. You can have a stretch, whatever works for you. But just real quick, notice how you feel in this moment. And that probably was just a few minutes, maybe even a little bit less, just to show what a difference it can make. Even just noticing your breath, the simplest possible thing.
Mm-hmm. All right. And with that, that was actually just a little sneak preview, a little snack. We're actually going to release some videos or podcasts of some breathing exercises and just, I guess, general relaxation exercises. So
Progressive muscle relaxation, right?
Yep. I think I'm going to do that one. So, but yeah,
excellent.
Just have some, if you don't know where to go and if you happen to like our voices because they sound familiar, yeah, just something that we wanted to give a tool that was easy to find. So, yeah.
Fantastic. You want to pose a reflection question for us?
Yes. So, going into this week, I want you guys to think about what is one thing that you can do this week to either reduce your stress or to better manage your stress. whether it's reflecting on your choices or picking one of these exercises to try and implement just once a day in your life. Figure out something to help you have a better relationship with your stress and get it in the back seat instead of in the front seat.
Yeah, great. And everyone, like we were saying, this is a practical episode. Lots of, I think, I've got some confidence here where I'm going to pat us on the back. These are valuable resources that we are just putting out there for free because we want to make your life better. We want to make the world a
Yeah.
better place. This is a free podcast, and all the stuff that we're linking to is at no cost. And we're more than happy to do that. And if you want to support the show, or even if you just want to find out, make sure that you don't miss a new episode, or if you want to, maybe you don't want to listen to every single episode, but you want to be aware of what the topic is of the episode that we're releasing. So if it's something like, ooh, that's something I do want to make sure not to miss, give us a follow. We are on Instagram, we are on Facebook. And so our Instagram handle is embrace.mental.health. And of course, that is at embrace.mental.health, and Facebook is facebook.com/embrace.mental.health.nsc. Got a little bit of a situation with our Facebook page, and so that may be changing in the near future, but that's where you can follow us as of this recording.
All right.
And also, hey, ask us questions and
Yes.
give us comments and tell us what you think and give us ideas. We would love for this to be an interaction. We would love to respond to listener questions or viewer questions or comments. We'd love to make this a conversation. So be part of the show and get engaged.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Really,
Thanks for listening.
we want this to be a community. So yeah,
Yep.
Join the community. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
See you then.